All right.
Eric, are we live?
Yes, the meeting is now live. Sorry for the wait. I was just confirming that the interpreters could hear us, so we're good to go.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you all. Welcome to the Governor's Council on Minnesota's Economic Expansion. My name is Steve Grove. I'm the commissioner at DEED, and along with my colleagues Jody Harpstead and Rosalind Robertson over at the Department of Human Services and Department of Labor, we're going to be helping support the work of this council, for which we're thrilled to kick off today. I'll turn it to Jody and Rosalind to say a quick hello so we can put some names and some faces as we get started. So Jody, Rosalind?
Good morning. I'm Jody Harpstead, the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services. Great to be here.
Good morning. I'm Rosalind Robertson, Commissioner at the Department of Labor and Industry. I'm delighted to be a part of this impressive group.
Well, we are thrilled to have the governor and Lieutenant Governor here to kick things off for us this morning. And before I hand it over to them and to our co-chairs, Paul Williams and Jeff Ettinger, I want to make just a couple of quick announcements on the council and its structure. First, this meeting, as you can tell, is being held remotely, and that's due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 allow us to hold remote meetings during the pandemic because in-person meetings conducted under that section are not practical or prudent. So again, we'd love to be in person, but we're going to do this remotely, and that brings its conveniences as well, of course. And then for those watching and who want to take advantage of ASL interpreters, there's a link on the council website where you can access a stream of this meeting where you'll have interpretation available for ASL needs. So that's at mn.gov/deed/economic expansion. That's mn.gov/deed/economic expansion. There's a whole host of other resources there as well about the council, so be sure to take a look. We're going to spend some time at the end of this meeting today talking logistics, talking details, talking the way forward. So you may have a lot of questions as we start, but we'll address all of those and have time for Q&A at the end. But first, we want to get started. And so I'm very proud and excited to turn it over to our governor, Tim Walz. Governor?
Thank you, Commissioner Grove. Thank you, Commissioners Harpstead and Robertson, and to everyone on here. A very heartfelt thank you and gratitude on behalf of the people of Minnesota. There is, I think I could say this and be correct about this, there's no busier room than the folks who are on this call. You have been at the forefront of so many things in Minnesota. You have led our hospitals, you've led our businesses, you've provided voice to workers, and you have been there as the state has and the nation has navigated some of the most difficult times from the pandemic and some of the most I would say unequal recovery that we've seen from the pandemic. And there are incredible bright spots, but there are warning signs, and there are folks that have been left behind during this time period. What I would like to say and am grateful for is the folks on this call have a vast amount of knowledge of what it's going to take for Minnesota to truly recover and to create the future where everyone's included. We know that our BIPOC communities continue to show disproportionate outcomes from home ownership to lifetime earnings to education. And many of you have worked on these issues for decades. I follow what you say. I read the Beige Book, and I know some of you actually write that, and those are things that matter. And my job as governor of Minnesota is to make sure that every Minnesotan has the opportunity and the things that they need to thrive. And because of that, all of us will benefit. And I want to just note to the folks who are giving of your time, I do not take it lightly that you are giving of this time to the state of Minnesota, and I hope that there are ample examples that you have seen that this model is one that our administration uses to get and practice best practices and to include as many voices as possible. We have used this model of these councils when it came to how Minnesota does its IT. We started out trying to tackle the MNLARS driver's license registration. And because of that, we got great results that were truly nonpartisan, and they served the taxpayers of Minnesota and provided a better service. That same model is what we used during the pandemic. We listened to our healthcare experts. We listened to folks who are running large and small healthcare systems. We listened to businesses on what it was going to take and what recoveries they needed. And because of that, we got better outcomes than had we not done so. So I just want to assure each and every one of you, your time on here and your expertise is not only valued, it is going to be put to use. And the guidelines and the things you're hearing around this, you're going to hear from Paul and Jeff, who will help guide this. This is meant to come up with solutions and to try and challenge us, about what are the things that we need to do. And there is no protecting of the status quo. And I want the thinking that comes out of this group to do the best possible work for Minnesota. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all of you've done. I'm excited, to be very honest with you, that Minnesotans are willing to challenge ourselves to find out what this bright shared future looks like, and we do that by working together. So with that, I would turn it to Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, and then we're very interested in doing introductions, hearing from some of you, and then getting this work started. So Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you so much, Governor. Hi, everybody. I am so excited for this group of folks and for this work. We've been having conversations about this very important council and the need to ensure that it reflects Minnesota as we are bringing our best and brightest folks forward to help us expand the economy. The governor and I are really grateful that you are just willing to lend your energy and your time and your talents to this work, as we know you're going to dig in and do work quickly, but also to do it with real intention. And we look forward to the recommendations of this council, and know that we have an opportunity for the people, all of the people of Minnesota, to emerge from this pandemic stronger than ever before. But that doesn't happen on accident. We are in a moment where we have a choice point in front of us to do this work intentionally, to rebuild our economy, to focus on communities who've been disproportionately impacted by systems throughout this pandemic, but many of these things that were in place before the pandemic that simply were exacerbated by the pandemic. And we will be able to better serve people of Minnesota as we talk about these issues, but then also have real solutions moving forward. The governor mentioned this as well, but we know that women and BIPOC communities, Black, Indigenous, and communities of color were disproportionately impacted and have been, frankly, on the front lines of this issue and have suffered far greater job losses than other Minnesotans. More than 50% of Black and Native workers in Minnesota lost work at some point during this pandemic. And during the first year of the pandemic, more than 575,000 Minnesota women filed for unemployment insurance. So the impacts of the pandemic make it even more critical in that we have an economy where every Minnesotan has an opportunity to learn and grow and thrive, but that we are meeting the moment of the specific needs of folks across the state of Minnesota. And that starts with the investment in our people, from our babies and our young children who need access to quality childcare in schools, to safe and affordable healthcare, to boosting local economies and creating good paying jobs for every Minnesotan. We know that these are the elements, and I think because we know these are the elements, this is the team that we have assembled and put together because folks have experience and expertise in all of these areas. And the governor and I often talk about how children and families and communities don't come in pieces. We need to see the whole community, the whole family, the whole individual. And this is the way that we also think we can approach this work here as part of this council. A lot of good work's already underway in this space, and I know that a lot of you will listen and then act, heading really heeding the advice of colleagues and community stakeholders as you collaborate on these recommendations. And so we can work intentionally to rebuild our economy, focusing on our communities who've been disproportionately impacted by the system. And we will better serve the people of Minnesota through that. So I really look forward to your ideas moving forward, and that we've got leaders from business, from nonprofits, we've got child advocates, we've got folks from all across the state who are ready to dig in, and I'm just excited to see the recommendations and also to work alongside you as we look to expand Minnesota's economy. We are in a good spot, and we can build on it. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Lieutenant Governor and Governor Walz. This is Paul Williams. I'm one of the co-chairs of this august group. So just thank you in advance for what is going to be a sprint here over the next couple of months, and really excited about this conversation. I shared yesterday at the announcement, as both the governor and lieutenant governor said, I mean, this is really a critical point in time, right, in terms of kind of continuing to fight through the latest surge of COVID, but also figuring out what is the new normal going to look like and kind of adapting to that, but also kind of the unevenness of this recovery and the impacts that has in BIPOC communities, in particular lower income communities, and for all of us. And what I'm also excited about is kind of looking forward. I mean, we have all been fighting so hard in the moment, right? In the current moment. I'm really excited to think about how can we make some investments and utilize some of these resources, right, looking forward as an investment in the future to prepare us, to accelerate us into the future. So really excited about that. Just so honored to be part of this group. I love the diversity of people and perspectives. Most of you I don't know, some of you I know quite well, but I just really think it's an interesting collection of folks and perspectives. And grateful, as I said yesterday, to the governor and lieutenant governor for believing in the importance of voice. I loved what you said, Governor, about using these councils, right, to help inform, right, to bring voice to the recommendations that you'll be making to the legislature. So so that's a wonderful opportunity. Excited about this process. Hoping you all can stay with us for a few minutes, because we're gonna do some kind of unique introductions here, and I'm excited to kind of hear from folks a little bit. Just want people to take 2 minutes to introduce yourself, your organization, and kind of share with us just what's one priority you want to lift up for this group to think about. We wanted to get your stuff and your ideas out on the table right off the bat. And we're going to be thinking kind of creatively throughout this process about how to collect, especially in a virtual environment, how to collect your perspectives, your opinions. But what are you passionate about? What's one thing that you really are excited about? And I'll just tell you, for me, I'm Paul Williams. I'll try and model this myself here. Paul Williams, I'm the president and CEO of Project for Pride in Living. We're a bigger nonprofit that builds and manages a lot of affordable housing, about 1,600 units across the Twin Cities. 3,500 folks live with us every night, and we also do a lot of employment and training work with lower income folks, particularly kind of across the Twin Cities area. Born and raised in the Rondo neighborhood over in St. Paul, so I'm a hometown kid. Still live in St. Paul, formerly the deputy mayor in St. Paul, so spent a little bit of time in government. The one thing that I'm most passionate about these days really is the future workforce, and kind of looking at what are the ways in which we can prepare particularly BIPOC communities. I think that is the future of our workforce. We're going to hear a little bit from our state demographer here shortly, but increasingly, and I say this to our graduating classes every year, right? We desperately need you in these communities of color. This is where our workforce will be coming from, even if we maximize, right, immigration and bringing other folks into the region and the state. we still need to build from within. We need to build our own pipeline. Increasingly, that's going to be coming from BIPOC communities of color. So that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about. I'm going to let my co-chair, Jeff Ettinger, follow. And Elizabeth, I'm not sure if we have a list of the council and can have that list up so people can just kind of tick down when it's their turn. But Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. And I'm excited to meet all of you virtually here. My name is Jeff Ettinger. I'm the current chair of the Hormel Foundation, which benefits the southern part of the state in Mower County. I'm former CEO of Hormel Foods, and my wife and I live in Austin, Minnesota. My priority that I wanted to talk about came up a lot yesterday during our press conference, and that's addressing the mismatch between job openings and the unemployed. I think we have the opportunity to proactively engage multiple segments in attacking this. From the government side, options might include transforming Deed's resource for job seekers. They were looking for a digital overhaul for their workforce services, making targeted investments potentially in reskilling. On the private sector side, my company, Hormel Foods, engaged in a partnership with our local community college 5 years ago to provide electrical and maintenance training for workers, and that's been a very successful program. I know Marvin Windows just announced a program with Northland Community College in mechatronics as well. So potentially adjustments in curriculums at our state's colleges might help. On the nonprofit side, again, using a local example, the Hormel Foundation provides what's called the Assurance Scholarship to every high school grad in Austin so that they can go to community college. I know Blandon has been involved in a similar program in Itasca County. We need to recognize that this, whatever we come up with, needs to include everyone. And I thought Brenda's comments yesterday in the press release really reflected that. This could include increasing workforce spending or seeding tech job programs. I think criminal justice reform could fit here as well. I think we have the opportunity to learn from labor leaders on the front line in terms of their view of the mismatch. I hear and read that many service sector workers aren't returning to work due to long hours and grueling work and COVID exposure and so forth. So I think for a thriving future, we need to think about making work more attractive, and Minnesota maybe can become a leader in this area. So that's mine, Paul, is can we create a Minnesota match that would address the mismatch?
Great. I haven't seen the list come up yet, so let's just go in the order that they appear in the biographies. Scott Burns, are you there?
Scott is running a few minutes late, so I think we can move on to Brett.
Okay, Brett Carter.
Hi, this is Brett Carter. I'm with Xcel Energy. Obviously, extremely excited about the opportunity to be a part of this organization, this task force. You know, we are seeing the opportunity for equity in this new energy economy. The thing I would say that I'm most excited about is the opportunity to engage everyone across the Twin Cities in the opportunity to gain jobs in building this new energy economy. We're excited about the economic development growth that we're seeing through this, and would just love to be a part of forming an equity play as this new energy economy really starts to take off. And many of you guys know that the electric transportation is huge. It's booming. We're seeing announcements across the board in that space every day. There are plans for more and more solar installations across the state. We just really want to make sure that this is not just the rich man's game, especially when it comes to transportation, because so far it has been a very, I'll just say, leaning into folks that can afford the Teslas and et cetera. But there's a whole nother economy underneath that could actually draw companies here that want to build these vehicles, that want to be a part of the supply chain for this new energy economy, including this new solar surge that we're seeing. So paying very close attention, and Governor Walz, we appreciate your leadership in the infrastructure bill. We're seeing a lot of activities and opportunities there. Do believe that Minnesota looks to gain in the areas of $70+ million associated with some of that infrastructure bill. So really looking at opportunities for us to be a part of the equity and the opportunities for jobs across the board.
Fabulous. Thanks, Brett. Joe Fowler.
Hello, I'm Joe Fowler, currently the president of the Minnesota State Building and Construction Trades Council. Represent approximately 70,000 union construction workers, both men and women, in a pretty diverse group across the state. Very excited to be a part of this board with all of y'all, and hopefully be able to make a meaningful difference for, you know, economic stability and the such for everyone, with a special emphasis on those in the BIPOC community and of the female gender, and even the outstate who are seeing some economic losses. You know, our organization prides itself on being the best at training people in the construction industry, providing them with lifetime careers, the ability to retire with dignity, and living wages and healthcare that matters for, you know, families. And those are things that I think help with economic stability for any family. If you aren't going broke because you have healthcare through your employer, that's good healthcare that doesn't have high deductibles. You have a healthier lifestyle. Your family has a healthier lifestyle because you aren't using emergency rooms for your healthcare, things like that. Again, we try to provide family sustaining jobs and a larger voice to the unorganized to become organized, and that's our goal. We work well with the utility contractors, especially Xcel, and they have a wonderful IRP that's going out there, and we're promoters of that and want to do whatever we can to make sure the BIPOC communities and people of the female gender get into these non-traditional jobs, or things that traditionally have been considered non-traditional in construction. It may not be for everybody, but it's certainly for a lot more people that are in it right now. And just trying to lower those barriers and working with y'all to lower those barriers to that wonderful opportunity of organized construction employment, and seeing what we can do to further that for everybody in this. And, you know, I have some things specific that I believe minority contractors or small business owners specific to our industry face that is probably not the norm for people of, you know, my color, of being white, and I want to try to lower those barriers the best that we can and work with y'all, especially on the financing side of it. I know we have Mr. Neil Kashkari from the Minneapolis Federal Reserve, excited to work with y'all, and the different skills that we have that we can all bring together. There are multiple facets here to really make meaningful difference as we move forward, both in the short term for our economy and the long term for Minnesota, to really work for everybody and make sure everybody gets that benefit of the rising economy and being able to grab on and benefit from that. So again, just really excited to be a part of this and able to bring whatever resources the State Building Trades has to this board to make a difference. So appreciate the opportunity, Governor.
Wonderful. Thanks, Joe. Jody Hubler.
Hi, everyone. One, I just want to express my gratitude and appreciation as well for the opportunity to serve on this council. Our LinkedIn profiles and the bios submitted will give the references to the I ams and the I wases, and I wanted to use my introduction a little bit more for the group to share more personal and philosophical. I've spent 28 years at the intersection of industries under massive transformation. Most recently, I pivoted to more broader opportunities. So unlike many of you, I can't point to just a single company that I am involved in. I brought my skills and my passions, and at least I hope a bit of expertise to the underserved and underrepresented through board service, bringing amplification to the state of Minnesota through Medical Alley and through Launch Minnesota, educational opportunities through Doherty Family College, equitable and inclusive health benefits, as Joe referenced, through Bind benefits, and voice and community through Caring Bridge, leveling the playing field by coming alongside 3 CEO female entrepreneurs and venture-backed startups here in the state of Minnesota. What I want you to know most, though, is that this is personal for me. I know firsthand what it's like when industry and community miss the curve or get hit by them, as I experienced it long ago in my senior year in high school, when the tides shifted and in one fell swoop, my high school, my junior high, and my grade school all closed. The only positive out of that was that my high school rebounding record can't be broken, so I still can hold that. But in all seriousness, I remembered most vividly picketing the school board to change their decision and wondering how in the world could they have let this happen. So for 28 years, I've been trying to use my talents and my time to respond to that very question. So I submit to you that my priority isn't yet a specific policy or a program. It's that we actually remember that this is personal. We have the opportunity through what we do to improve education, job stimulus and growth, and for the entrepreneurial ecosystem in this community to thrive. Thank you.
That's outstanding. Thank you, Jody. Brenda Hilbrick.
I always have to find my buttons here. Hi, I'm really happy to have the opportunity to be here to start this work with all of you too. My name is Brenda Hilbrick. I work at SEIU Healthcare Minnesota. We represent close to 50,000 healthcare workers across the state of Minnesota in hospitals, clinics, and in long-term care settings and in home care. Our members were truly the front line of the pandemic, caring for Minnesota. They spent the last 18 months or longer doing all of the things you've seen on TV, doing all of the things that you've witnessed, whether you have loved ones who have had COVID or have just been paying close attention. Their experiences, when you hear them told, are really chilling. We are very interested in finding ways to invest and secure our healthcare and long-term care workforce, the majority of whom are BIPOC and women. Before the pandemic and exacerbated by it, our healthcare and long-term care workforce has been suffering from understaffing, which creates a cascading number of problems related to retention in the workforce. Under pre-pandemic circumstances, we were understaffed. This was because of reductions by employers, fewer people who were available who wanted to do the work. The work includes a high risk of injury, the highest in any industry, based on just their regular job tasks, not including increased violence in the workplace, both physical and emotional, including experiences of discrimination, disparate treatment, and the weight of systemic racism, and of course, compensation. Currently, many of the employers we represent cannot hire staff. Current employees are leaving healthcare due to reasons compounded by the pandemic, safety, staffing, which leads to extreme overtime and exhaustion, compassion fatigue, low compensation, and little recognition for the work that they have just done through the pandemic. These are all contributing factors to people not wanting to stay, and when people are hired, often leave very quickly after they start. This is what we would call a crisis situation, and we want to ensure that we have healthcare and long-term care workforce that works to care for us as the pandemic continues and after it. We believe we have a need for new investments to keep people in these essential professions and to bring new people into them. And this could be a whole array of possibilities, but we really need to start attracting people back to these jobs. And that's sort of what I come in with in terms of our priorities.
Thanks, Brenda. Neil Kashkari.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. It is great to be with you. I'm honored to be included in this esteemed council. I really appreciate the opportunity. I am President and CEO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. We are part of the nation's central bank. We were created by Congress in 1913. In 1913, Congress did something unique. They said they didn't want the nation's central bank simply housed in Washington, D.C. They wanted it distributed around the country. So all the regions of the country had a voice in the monetary policy process. So we are the 9th Federal Reserve Bank in the country, and we represent Minnesota, North and South Dakota, Montana, part of Michigan and part of Wisconsin. And a big part of our jobs are to get to know what's happening on the ground here so we can bring this perspective back to Washington in that process. You know, Congress has assigned us two primary goals, one of which is a stable economy, another of which is maximum employment. As many Americans and as many Minnesotans as possible gainfully employed, participating in our economy. We learned before the pandemic hit that there are tremendous benefits to society and to families and to our communities by having more Minnesotans gainfully employed and participating. And it's better for those families, it's better for their neighborhoods, and it's better for the economy as a whole. And so this is something I'm very passionate about. How do we get to an economy where everybody has a good opportunity to work hard, to get the job they want, and to provide for themselves? It's in everybody's interest. And I know all of us share that goal, that long-term goal. So that's something I'm going to be very focused on in this work. And the last thing I'll just say, Governor, it's music to my ears and my colleagues to hear you say you read the Beige Book. So thank you for that. My colleagues will be thrilled. So thank you for having me. I'm honored to be part of this group.
Great. Thanks, Neil. Marcus Owens.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor and Lieutenant Governor, for your leadership and inviting me to be a part of this council. Hi all, I'm Marcus Owens, the Executive Director of the African American Leadership Forum. We are a network of over 4,000 African American leaders, institutions, impact partners, and allies that come together, collaborate, and champion solutions to improve the lives of African Americans here in Minnesota. It's an honor to join such an esteemed and talented group of leaders across our state to put our minds together and develop ways for us to build a more just and equitable economy for all Minnesotans. I look forward to learning from you all and building with you together. The thing I'd like to lift up to this group is to think of this journey not just as an exercise in policy and dollars, but how do we create access to information and decision power to the people and communities we want to impact? And in this evolution of how we build a more inclusive economy, we begin to then think of how we invest in the people infrastructure of these communities differently than we've ever done before. As I talk to folks in my community, the one thing that I hear loud and clear is the need for greater investment in the young people, particularly outside of school. This is one of the most immediate areas, and it should be comprehensive and meet our youth where they are now and helps them build for their future. This includes mental health services, employment and career opportunities, and out-of-school activities. These are the most critical items to creating a safer community for all of us. I also hear the need to build out ecosystems of economic opportunity at the community level, creating commerce activity and improving ownership from a specific community or cultural lens. I can imagine these areas of focus aren't just different from many of the other communities represented here on this council and from across our state. So I look forward to working with you all to create opportunity and access to all. And thank you.
Great, thanks, Marcus. Talea Palmer. Talea there?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Talea Palmer. I'm the president and CEO of the Blannon Foundation. I'm joining you from Cass Lake, Minnesota. I'm so honored to be in a room with so many brilliant, hardworking people. And when I kind of screened the opportunity, I called a few people and they said, oh, these are the doers of Minnesota. I'm a doer and I'm happy to be a part of this. I've spent 25 years doing comprehensive community development in rural and tribal communities in northern Minnesota. I'm relatively new to the position at the Blannon Foundation and I'm enjoying the opportunity to be here. Our priorities and my priorities include a future workforce that prioritizes populations that have been historically excluded from the workforce and looking at two-generation approaches to workforce development in Minnesota. I'm particularly interested in the systems engineering and economies of scale for rural and outstate populations. And that in the decisions we make in the trajectory forward, we consider the historical implications of exclusion, as well as recession that has happened in rural regions of Minnesota. An emphasis I would like to include would be rural public education funding formulas, the disproportionate stress and burden on rural leaders in Minnesota, the rural healthcare funding formulas that are receding in rural spaces, small community infrastructure needs for our small towns, housing opportunity systems that are not just crisis, but also transitional low income and into home ownership, that we approach housing with a more comprehensive lens. Furthermore, I'd like to include missing and murdered Indigenous women as a significant priority in Minnesota. The out-of-home placement rate of American Indian children in Minnesota is the largest disparity of any minority in the country. We have an absolute public health crisis in northern Minnesota with out-of-home placement of our children. It needs direct attention. The scales are really high and we're at a critical point in history to intervene. I would also like to suggest that we look at the incarceration rates and alternatives to incarceration for first-time offenders in Minnesota that's directly related to education and workforce's opportunities. And the last thing that I would say, after having started several behavioral health billing opportunities, is the unique opportunity we have to advance telemedicine, and that Minnesota has an opportunity to look at prevention-based billing rather than intervention-based billing. As a child of an incarcerated parent, I want to use a little bit of my personal story to suggest that there is no way to get intervention in Minnesota without hitting rock bottom. We do not bill for prevention in Minnesota, and if we're going to do two-generation intervention for communities that have been historically excluded, we'll need to take a good look at how the long-term implications of billing solely intervention are serving or not serving our state. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Talia. Juhi Pomplin.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm a little bit late, so just trying to jump onto the trend of a introduction and sense of purpose for being here, if that is the question. And so again, thank you for letting me be here. I'm Juhi Pomplin. I'm the Executive Director for Alliance for Metropolitan Stability. We are a coalition-based organization of over 33 organizations working on issues of racial equity in land use and development in the Twin Cities region. And that is not just about how we build and develop land, but what we do with that land to really benefit communities of color. And so we have we house three coalitions, one focused on the Blue Line extension and looking at land use and development and economic opportunities for communities of color along the transit corridor. We have an equity in place table that is focused on housing and making sure people stay housed, are able to stay at home, tenant protections so that tenants have rights to stay in place and create more affordable housing. And then we also have a business resource collective that is made up of over 20 BIPOC-led organizations focused on small business entrepreneurship and creative business and micro enterprises in Minnesota. As well as Alliance sits at numerous tables that also focus on climate and environmental justice issues, all with the racial equity lens. And so I'm thrilled to be a part of this table. I think the strength that the Alliance and myself bring is a real comprehensive intersectional perspective of what it takes to build an economic future for the Twin Cities, specifically as the demographic shift that we've been talking about for decades really is pushing to reality. And our communities of color, Indigenous communities become majority, specifically in the Twin Cities region, but throughout the state, honestly. And Minnesota has not responded to that, has been waiting to truly respond to that shift, and it's creating a crisis for us. And so I think this is a really great opportunity for us to pay attention to that and invest in an economy that really works for our communities of color. And numerous people, from what I've heard, others have identified some of the unique factors that disproportionately impact our communities of color in job access, in accessing capital for entrepreneurship and success. And the definitions and language that we use in all of this, I think, is really important to be intentional and to think culturally inclusive of how different communities also think about these issues, because sometimes the predominant or dominant paradigm does not resonate with our communities. And so we need to be thinking about how we talk about it too, and the language we use. So thank you very much for letting me be here, and that's it.
Great, thank you. Let's see, Nanoko Sato.
Yes. Hi. Good morning. And again, thank you so much for this opportunity to serve on this committee with such an incredible group of people. My name is Nanoko Sato. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director for the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits. We are a statewide association of nonprofits that serve 2,300 member organizations. And we also work with the Minnesota Budget Project, which is a team that advocates and identifies policy solutions towards opportunities and economic security for all Minnesotans. I'm also very new to the position. I started in August of 2021, following a long tenure of John Pratt, who is our founder. And I have in my career has worked in direct service, supporting youth, going to college. And then I also currently serve on boards of organizations that uplift voices of Asian Americans and agents. I'm also an immigrant. I grew up in a low-income household. I'm a first-generation college student. So everything that we're talking about here, prosperity of communities and individuals, are very personal for me. What I wanted to share was that the disparities we see in communities that have predated COVID also apply to the nonprofit organizations as well, especially those who are located in Greater Minnesota, BIPOC-led or centered, or culturally specific organizations, and especially those with small budgets. Direct service nonprofits also have faced an increased demand for services, particularly those who have built-in trust in the communities that they serve. And nonprofits also have a unique structure, which makes it difficult for them to meet some of the criteria that we have seen in grant applications designed for for-profit organizations, such as naming a business owner or showing a decrease in revenue, which really doesn't matter if their expenses are increasing due to demand. Nonprofits are also struggling in filling vital positions, especially for our sector that is predominantly filled by women identifying people who tend to hold unfair burden to effectively balance work and life responsibilities. Lack of childcare is certainly a factor, as well as low wages and lack of benefits for organizations struggling to make ends meet. What I would like to see as we respond to disparities and disinvestments that predated COVID, we should acknowledge our individual power that we hold as hand-selected leaders on this committee, and hold each other accountable to ensure voices of the communities who are historically marginalized within the sectors are represented at the center of our conversations. And I would also like to see high-level guidance and structures on equitable grant-making processes so that other types of smaller entities like counties and cities and other entities don't struggle in figuring out how to effectively and quickly give out resources to struggling nonprofits. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Great, thank you, Nanoko. Tracy Tapani. Is Tracy here from Wyoming Machine? Okay, we'll see if she joins us here in a bit. How about Bharti Wahi from Children's Defense Fund?
Good morning, everybody. It's so great to see you and be amongst so many really amazing leaders. I was telling somebody yesterday, I was like, as the child advocate in the room, I'm feeling a little like the cheese is standing alone here. So I hope nobody regrets the decision of including me in the group, but I'm excited to be here. As I said, my name is Bharti. I'm the Executive Director of the Children's Defense Fund. My pronouns are she, her. And I think that what I appreciate from some of what was shared by others is just an acknowledgement that children and youth and families and communities don't come in parts. That certainly, if anything, the pandemic has shown us is the interconnectedness of different elements of our communities, our economy, right? And I think when one part of that economy is struggling or not working, it ripples out because this is an interconnected ecosystem. And so I think that is certainly something that I hope that we are considering that. And I think what I would love for this group to be actively considering is, what does it actually mean to have an inclusive economy? When we talk about things like economic stability, or security, or dare we say it, mobility? What do we actually mean by that? And what is the inclusive definition of that? Not just wage or education, but access to healthcare, childcare, supports, and what does it feel like? How does that feel, right? Not just sort of what the numbers tell us. And if there's one thing I sort of want to bring to this conversation, in 2019, prior to all of us sort of moving away from in-person meetings, we did a series of community engagement sessions at CDF. And one of the questions that we asked families families from all sorts of communities, Black, Indigenous, communities of color. And I remember there's this one, we asked one question, and it was sort of, if you had all the power in the world, right, what would you do with it? And there was one mother, she was the mother of two young children. And she said, I would get my daughter dance lessons. And I was like, can you say more about that? And she was like, no, I would love to be able to have dance lessons. And she told me all about the dance lessons, and it was a great conversation. But in my mind, I thought to myself, she is so far away. Like, she is struggling so hard to meet her basic needs that dance lessons represent, I think, the pinnacle, right? The ability to actually bring joy, right? That joy could be a part of what she considered her economic opportunity. And I think if we can be holding that mom, right? That how do we create an inclusive economy where a mom can very easily access and get dance lessons for her child. And I hope that we think about that mom. I know I will be, because I think about her every day in the context of my work. When we are thinking about how we can think about economic expansion for every Minnesota child, every Minnesota youth, every Minnesota family, and every Minnesota community.
Fabulous. Thank you, Barty. And last but certainly not least, Penny Wheeler. Are you out there, Penny?
I am. Thank you, Paul. And as Paul, you know, and Barty knows, and Governor Walz knows, that being a W has its advantages and disadvantages to things. But really proud to be part of this group. You know, as a lifelong Minnesotan, one who loves the state, you know, it just feels an honor to do anything we can in our power to better the lives of those who live in this state. So I'm proud to be part of this group. I'm the CEO of Allina Health. We care for about 1 in 5 Minnesotans with 29,000 incredible employees, many of whom have bent over backwards and done backflips during this time, as Brenda alluded to, with their service. So it's been incredible. I was monitoring how full our beds are today, and we have an incredible demand exacerbated by staffing challenges with not enough staff to care for those. So we're watching that really closely, and at the same time, I'm seeing the disconnect between a stat I heard that we have the lowest employee workforce participation since 1977 across the United States. So that disconnect is what I'm looking forward to and excited about in terms of that intersect between equity and workforce growth is, I think, that focus area. And I'm really especially excited about things that we can look for long term. How do we partner with educational institutions? How do we think of apprenticeship models? How do we think of using automation to do some more mundane tasks so people can rise to the abilities of their human possibilities? Those are some of the things that intersection between an equitable workforce that has opportunities for all and avoids the discriminatory practices, and one that actually grows the workforce is important. Lastly, I'll just say, we, like many, we know that health isn't an absence of disease. Health is safety, a roof over your head, the food you have, valuable work, and being able to care for each other and your families. And one of that is being able to have, you know, purposeful work. And I think that purposeful work for all is something that I hope we can actually help move the ball on with this wonderful group of people here. Love to translate the knowing to doing with all of you. So thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Penny. Thanks everyone. Just really good good stuff, and on so many different dimensions. I loved some of what particularly several of you shared personal stories and shared personal examples, and there's a protocol for discussion of equity and particularly racial equity issues called Courageous Conversations, whether you know of it or not. There are several elements of that protocol that talk about keep it personal. Actually, kind of don't go out there into the land of theory and kind of talking about others. Talk about your own experience and talk about specific examples, just as a way of keeping things grounded. So Jody, I think, talked about that in particular. Keep it personal, and again, we're going to cover some big issues and big topics and big policies, but I do love the personal element of that. And I know for us in our work at PPL, every day is personal, and it is this mix of kind of personal and policy that I think is really fertile ground for conversation. So I think we still have the governor with us and the lieutenant governor. I'm just wondering, if I could go off script here and maybe just come back to you for a few minutes of just any reactions based on kind of all that's been shared here, and any final words we can get from you before you have to leave.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. First of all, this is so good for the soul. We chose wisely, and hearing your passions, hearing your experiences, looking and seeing and sounding like Minnesota sounds, and bringing voices to folks who not only don't get a chance to be at these tables, they don't even know they exist. And to have you there to make sure that voice is heard is something. I want you to know I feel a fierce sense of urgency like you feel. And I also think we are at a unique moment in time of things that have been thrust upon us and circumstance, whether it be confronting racial inequities that have plagued us for generations, or whether it be dealing with a realignment of the economy that we're seeing because of a global pandemic. We're also at a unique point that our state finances are solid and give us an opportunity to try and expand that ability to find joy, as Ms. Wahi said, which is really what it's about. And I can assure you, Ms. Wahi, in the lieutenant governor and myself, you also have a few more child advocates. I think probably every square on here is with you, and because we know that that sense of what our future is not a cliche. And let's just be very candid. If our children aren't safe, our families aren't safe, and we're not okay. And if any child is suffering, we're all suffering. So I'm just grateful. And I don't know, my job as governor, I've found is a couple of things to simplify it, is to be able to ask the right questions and then be able to be surrounded by people who know how to answer them, because I don't have all the answers, obviously, but I do believe with this group and with your focus, this really puts us in a position to be bold, to use that ability of those federal dollars and RDEEF dollars. And I can assure you that if there's things that are coming out of this, that we, meaning the lieutenant governor, myself, and building a coalition, we will burn all political capital that we may still have to try and get these things done, because Minnesotans will be better off. So Lieutenant Governor, if you want to close it off, I'm going to move on to the next meeting, but I'm excited to know you're here, and this is exactly what we were hoping for would happen. So thank you.
So I'm going to associate myself with all of the remarks from the governor, and just say that I am incredibly inspired and hopeful by this group of folks. And, you know, Barty, bringing it back to the joy, and I would also add to that list that families, children and families and Minnesotans who may have felt disconnected or not seen should also be able to feel some hope. And I think that is, you know, what we are also charged to do. So Chimi Gwech, thank you so much for your willingness to do this work and to do it with us, and to just lend all of your talents and passion to it. And we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you to the governor and to Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. Wonderful to have them both here, and I, you know, clearly they've got a lot invested in this, and have been great early on, and clearly, you know, high expectations. So I'm excited to deliver on that. So I think the state demographer is with us. We thought it was important to start, particularly with just kind of I love demographers, right? Just in terms of what kind of looking at where are we headed in terms of the population and what does that tell us, right? About our future. We thought it would be good to kind of ground ourselves, and really our first few meetings, we'll talk about this a little bit more here in a little bit, but our first several meetings are going to be all about kind of creating common ground, both in terms of kind of data, background, metrics, but also different perspectives. And so in the first 3-4 meetings, you'll see that we've got kind of a setup of different panelists and speakers and introductions to get us all grounded, and then we will go into the hard work of digging into recommendations, principles, guidelines, those kinds of things, really in the second half of the process. We'll come back to that after hearing from the demographer, and we'll have some time for Q&A with the demographer as well. So Susan, are you out there, Susan Brower?
I am. Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Beautiful. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. It's great to be here. I do have some slides to share with you, so one moment, please. I pull those up. Okay. Can you see that okay? Are my slides coming through?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. So I've been asked to share with you, thank you for your kind words too about demographers. That's much kinder than my snarky teenage daughter describes demographers, but so it is. I've been asked to share just a brief overview of the demographic changes that we expect in the coming years and the impact that they will have on Minnesota's economic future. One of the reasons why I was drawn to demography in the very first place was because you have a special lens on the future that you don't have without knowing the demographics. And so that kind of magical power was the whole reason why I got interested in this kind of strange field anyway. And I want to share a bit of what I see coming in the future with you today. So one of the biggest demographic changes with fundamental impacts for our economy is the size and the growth of our labor force. As the large and aging baby boom generation began moving into their retirement years beginning in 2011, the state has experienced a precipitous slowdown in the growth in the number of people in the labor force. And so while we might not think about this very often, the number of workers and the skills of the workers are prerequisites to a strong economy. And this is the underlying reality, the demographic reality that we're dealing with right now. It's just not a lot of growth in the workforce. You can see that we, for past decades, since 1970, we had gotten used to having a rapidly growing workforce, more and more, tens of thousands of workers added each year. That's just not the case now, and it's not going to be the case into the foreseeable future, barring any kind of massive change in migration. The biggest factor that influences these numbers that we see here is just the pattern of births 16 to 64 years ago. And so there's not much we can do to go back in time and change those birth rates. They're really just playing out in our workforce patterns now. We can maybe do a little bit around migration and about resettling and recruiting people to the state. I'll share some of those numbers with you in a moment. But for the most part, this is what we have to work with. The number of people that we have here today to work and to fuel our economy is very close to the number of people that we will have in 10 and 15 and 20 years to do so, barring any kind of massive change. In the past several years, employers have really begun to feel the pain of what it means to not be able to find the workers they need to keep their businesses going. The bars on this graph show the number of job openings in the state, and they're collected through Deed's job vacancy survey. And that kind of mountainous shape in the background is the number of unemployed people actively looking for work, which is a proxy to show the relative availability of workers compared to the number of job openings. And you can see that between 2017 and 2019, the number of job openings in the state surpassed the number of job seekers statewide. The pandemic shook up that ratio. We saw that peak there during that Q2 of 2020, but we're right back to having just about as many job openings now as we have people actively looking for work. So recall that the baby boomers began retiring in 2011. There's almost no growth projected in the labor force moving forward. It's a sobering picture, but it's our reality that really we have a very, very tight labor market and not a lot of growth projected in the state in the coming years. What could change is the pattern of migration and immigration. And if we just look historically at how Minnesota has changed due to international immigration, it has tended to grow, at least in the most recent period, as the economy has improved and recovered from the Great Recession. We saw more people coming from other countries to the US and to Minnesota specifically. That started tapering off in the more recent period, 2017, 2018, 2019, as federal policies either capped the flow of immigrants to the US or restricted the flow using policies that made it harder to come to the US. So at the time when we would have expected to see more international immigrants because of a high demand for workers, we actually saw those numbers beginning to decline. And these numbers go, before the pandemic even hit. We don't have a number yet since that time. So the policies and programs and infrastructure needed to integrate new residents quickly will become an increasingly important prerequisite to future population growth and to future economic growth. I just want to emphasize that Minnesota's future economy will depend on incorporating new residents, new workers, in addition to the workers that we have now that we're not fully utilizing their skills. And so whether that means resettling political refugees or climate refugees, welcoming economic immigrants with high or low skills that can be upskilled or upgraded, or retaining international students that come to the state for college. These are all kind of ways that we can support the growth of our economy that we know will be very hard to keep off the trajectory that we have projected. Because we don't expect a tremendous amount of growth in the workforce, barring major changes to migration, I want to share with you what our domestic migration histories looked like as well. In the 1990s, we tended to gain residents net from other states, but for nearly 15 years between 2002 and 2016, we were a net exporter of residents to other states. These numbers are relatively small on an annual basis, but they do add up, especially when we're talking about these workforce shortages. It appears that between 2017 and 2019 that trend may have turned around a bit. We'll see what happens when we get numbers back from after the pandemic. But we did have a small but positive inflow of new residents to Minnesota from other states in the last few years. I don't think that moving forward, our migration patterns are likely, when we're looking at the next 20 to 30 years, that they're likely to look like what we've had in the past. In fact, I think there's a great likelihood that we will see massive changes in domestic and global migration in the coming years due to climate change. And I think that climate change will impact our economic future in a time during which we typically make demographic projections. So we're very comfortable projecting out typically 30, 40 years, but I think within that time period is really when we're going to start to see massive migrations due to some of the climate change, whether it's from coastal cities in the US, from areas that have a scarce supply of water, or for people who are forced to move due to drought or weather events around the globe. Whether we can house, feed, and support transitions to productive work of people whose lives and homes have been upended is what I believe will be a major factor in Minnesota's long-term economic success. Now, those things to help resettle people whose lives have been upended, kind of share in common some of the challenges that we already have in incorporating to productive work some of the populations that were born and raised right here in Minnesota. And I want to wrap up by sharing another really important piece of how our workforce is changing and will continue to change in the future. We're looking here at our state's population by age and race. So this is a pyramid going up every 5 years. We've got a 5-year age bar. And you can see that as we go younger, we become much more diverse. The green portion of the bar are BIPOC communities, and you can see that at the lower end of the work life, 15 to 19-year-olds, about 1 in 3 of those new workers or workers, young people entering the workforce, are people of color or part of a BIPOC community, compared to about 9% of the group that is retiring. So this means that we will continue to become more diverse just because of this flow of people out of the workforce and into the workforce due to aging in and out. And Minnesota knows that it can do better and needs to do better with respect to supporting and incorporating the full scope of productive work of many BIPOC communities, as we've heard in many of your introductions today. The policies and tools that we put in place to do this are needed now more than they ever were, not only from the perspective of the well-being of Minnesota's BIPOC families, as fundamentally important as that is, but also just for the well-being of the economy as a whole, especially when we consider just the trickle of growth that we're projecting for the labor force due to our birth patterns. So I can't show you the full scope of Minnesota's future in graphs, as much as I would love to, but I do believe that there will be a lot of uncertainty in our future due to climate change, and even more so than in our recent past than in the pandemic. So anything that this council can do to help stabilize work and incorporate culturally diverse workers in times of uncertainty will serve the workers that we make here in Minnesota and the ones that we hope to recruit and resettle from elsewhere in the coming decades. And that is what I have prepared for you today. I'm happy to take questions if we have time. Let me get rid of this slide here.
Fabulous, Susan, thank you. We've got Susan here for a bit of time and would love to have some questions from folks. I'll just kick us off as people are thinking about your questions, and I'm assuming we can do are we able to unmute folks, or are people able to unmute themselves? Yes? Okay, yep. Great. Initial question, that last slide actually, Susan, was really important, and your comment that 1 in 3 new workers will be coming from communities of color. What is the time frame of that projection? Is that over the next how many years?
So that was just looking at the state's population right now in 2019. And so that means that people who are 15 to 19 in that age group, 31% are people of color now. So that's really that's happening right now. Actually, it's already happened, right? 2019, they've already started aging into the workforce. And then, as you can see, or could see, kind of going down further, we just become more and more diverse as we get younger.
And so, if do you have projections in terms of, if we were to look, in the next 5 to 10 years, let's say, I'm guessing that trend only accelerates.
Yeah, so the increase in racial and cultural diversity, ethnic diversity, increases at about 0.5 percentage point per year, and I'm happy to share those projections with you. Part of it is due to that migration. New people moving here are more likely to be people of color, especially if they're coming from around the globe. And also the aging of our young, diverse group of Minnesotans into the working years.
Great, thanks. Other questions?
Maybe I'll start, Paul. Penny Wheeler here. Susan, thank you very much for your presentation. You gave us a couple of, real gems in that, because you've been looking at this a lot. So, you said, gosh, integrate new population quickly. That's one thing we should do. We should think about how resettlement and how we actually help that. We certainly should think about, opportunities for our BIPOC communities, given the demographic changes. Are there other things that you're seeing that you look at this all the time? Are there other translations you have that would translate into actions we might take that as you look at these trends?
I guess, I'm used to making projections based on the recent past and our recent history. And that's typically what we do. We fold into what's happened recently to come up with what's probable for the future. And as I mentioned with climate change, I think it really throws a wrench into doing that, because it really shifts what's open in terms of possibilities for the future. It shifts open uncertainty. And so while I don't have specific policy recommendations, with respect to that, I would just say that that uncertainty because of climate change is really going to be in our next 20, 30, 40 years, and just what that means for, food production and for availability of resources and for, where people are moving from and to. All those things are set to move in a way that we haven't experienced in the last 50 years. And so kind of keeping uncertainty front and center is something that I think would be important.
Thank you, Susan.
One of the things, and I appreciate your presentation, Susan, one of the things that I think could really be helpful is taking that next step of granularity around the talent that's in the pipeline, capabilities, competencies, so that we can start to see if there is a match with the, I'll just say, the burgeoning economic opportunities, specifically around jobs and skill sets that are going to be required, because we see a huge surge of opportunities in the space that is being created by the focus on climate change. And so if there's a way for us to sort of match what we see in that pipeline of talent, it would be great for us to, even if they don't have the competencies, start to put those types of skill sets in there. Don't know if we have a connection with the universities, maybe community colleges in this group, but that plays a big role. And I saw it happen in Charlotte when the banking industry was just really kicking off, and the community colleges started training skill sets in risk, skill sets in teller, skill sets in customer care centers. And so that became the second largest financial hub in the country, as you know. So I think that if we can start to really consider where is the economy going here, and what is it that we need to start thinking about from a reskilling perspective, or even skilling perspective, meaning first opportunity, I think it would play a huge role in what we're trying to do here as a group.
I'll just put a point of emphasis. Sorry, Susan, I'll just put a point of emphasis under Brett. Some of the work that we've been doing at Doherty Family College, the introduction of their AA degree program as a part of St. Thomas, is that sub-demographic, just even the recruitment effort to reintroduce some of the populations to what they may not even, right, that old adage of you can't be what you can't see. And so I think for us to be able to get some of that sub-demographic, Susan, even into the aging into mid-job transfer, right? What occurs, women exiting at birth rate, what occurs return. If there's ways that sub-demographic can start to give us indications of what we know to be true around graduation, persistency, the impact of women. I think there's some really interesting sub-data sets in there that both Penny and Brett have highlighted.
I'm happy.
And all of this makes me think. Go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say, I'm happy to provide more data as whatever would be useful, whatever is available, and that we can provide. I'm happy to share.
That's great. We'll follow up on that. To the question that Juhi raised here in the chat, I think is somewhat related to this, and it's about kind of parsing between the who is currently here, right? The workforce that is currently here or is aging into their working years, and what can we understand about the and underemployed labor force that's here now, and what do we need to be doing with them, or is there additional data that can help us understand that?
So we have a report on our site, so it's mn.gov/demography, and it's called The Economic Status of Minnesotans. The last time we put it out is 2018. We put it out periodically, but we look at the 17 largest cultural communities in Minnesota. And so we're looking specifically at kind of a range of economic and social indicators related to whether someone's Somali or Ethiopian or US born African American. And so I just want you to know that those data are out there and available, and they really were aimed at looking at the kind of economic and labor force context of different cultural groups that are specific here in Minnesota to help address some of those potential barriers. But again, I'm happy if that doesn't do it, I'm happy to work with you to see what would be useful.
That's great. Nanoko, I see you put a question there in the chat. Do you want to just ask that question here?
Yeah, sure. So just wondering if, as we're looking at these changes in demographics, is there a way for us to kind of think about where folks are going? Because I was thinking in terms of global immigrants and refugees, and they tend to go towards places where they're familiar or they feel safe, right? Or there's already an established community. And so we're seeing sort of a trend in more BIPOC folks in Worthington, for example. And so I'm just wondering, and for us, I think for the nonprofit sector, as we're talking about grant distribution within Minnesota, how do we think about equity and centering not, like rural Minnesota, but also like BIPOC communities as well. So I don't know if there's a way to predict where people are going more so than just in the cities alone.
We do just have census data out that give us a sense of where the pockets of growth are, and particularly where there's been more growth in diverse populations, and that growth tends to have a momentum to it. And so where we have seen it in the recent past is where we would project that it's going to happen in the foreseeable future. And so, yes, I'm happy to share those data with you as well.
So lots of good stuff spinning there in the chat, both comments, questions, affirmations. I think the question of kind of trends in BIPOC growth in BIPOC communities in outstate, kind of those major urban centers in greater Minnesota. I think Austin, Jeff shared, is seeing a lot of that. Marshall, St. Cloud, certainly Duluth, Rochester. Kind of across the board. Other questions from council members? We got a few more minutes here with this segment.
Maybe I would just ask also, I think that there is demographic information, and I think it's tied to also resettlement and immigration, but I think maybe some of the aging patterns in certain counties and regions of the state, right? So we know that there are parts of Minnesota where the median age may be 55, maybe kind of closing in on 60. So I think maybe having some of that information might also be helpful too as we think about this. yeah, so I mean, I'm just, as we think about what additional data might be helpful, is sort of like, you know, what is the average age of people in different parts of the state, and how does that impact the economy, you know, the tax base, all of those kinds of things.
So Susan, the longer you hang around, the more homework you're getting. It's good. Talea.
I think that mapping the regional areas around age is really critical in rural spaces to understand who is leaving the workforce, and then how do we create the workforce that is going to be needed for new economies. I think that would really help us take a good look at how to make informed decisions related to new economies and the ability to influence inclusive economies in that process. Some of the spaces that are being identified as rural hubs are urban. We make that word up. It's urban. It's not really rural. And so I think that that's a really important way for us to map some of the ways that the workforce is changing in Minnesota. Minnesota is a huge state, and to look at how that works. And I think that there's a direct correlation to a growing white nationalism trend in some of our homogenous remote rural spaces, and that we have some type of responsibility to consider how we intervene in that practice in regions that have seen recession since the 70s, and an effort of white nationalists to recruit young white low-income men, typically who are children of single parent households that are affected by the recession that we've had. You know, and I think more information is needed in terms of understanding how white nationalism is encroaching in places in Minnesota.
Susan, thank you for your presentation. A couple of things that I just want to highlight too, and Julie kind of mentioned it around the underemployed. I think any indicators around quality of life indicators such as, you know, income levels, particularly those in the lower income brackets, and how that's related to how many jobs they're working. Also the connection points between, you know, what other things that might be connecting to that, such as cost of housing, childcare, some of the things that are really driving some of the unemployment numbers for many of these communities. Folks can't work because of the cost of these different things a lot of times, or what we're seeing in particular with the bus driver shortage and things, because the employers aren't adjusting as fast to the needs of the quality of life of the workers. So anything that just connects quality of life to how the workforce is shifting and changing would be super helpful. Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions at all for Susan? Yeah,
Chair.
Really good stuff. Yeah, go ahead.
Chair, this is Joe Fowler, and maybe this was covered between all of the different questions and how they kind of overlap for you, Susan. This might have been covered, but there is a way to track people that are coming in to the working age, 16 to 19 to 20. I don't know if there is, but them moving out of those rural areas and into more urban areas. I think some of that is because of lack of economic opportunity that they see in their area. Just pick Appleton, Minnesota, you know, out in western Minnesota as an example. I do some outdoor hunting out there, and you know, I've noticed that there's really not a lot of economic opportunities, no matter what color of person you are or what your gender is out there. And if we're seeing a trend that those people of the working age are moving away from those areas, it speaks, I think, to what I believe it was Talea was saying in regards to maybe a growing concern of white nationalism in some of those areas. If they feel there's no longer economic opportunity, right, wrong, or different, I don't believe that it's the case, but they may be feeling like those economic opportunities aren't being given to them and somebody else, and it's a form of animosity and a way to blame. And that is one thing. If it's really because of the lack of economic opportunity, maybe that's something we can take a look at and see if maybe some of the investment goes out there as well. And that may be one way to kind of head some of that off, or to make it so it's not a growing trend. If there's a way to track some of those people coming into working age, college age, and if they're moving away from those areas because of that, I don't know if there's a way to tie those things in, but I think it's a relevant metric.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we've looked at areas in the past, particularly migration of young adults, we have seen net outflows of people from more rural counties. They tend to return in their 30s when they have their own families, when they're a little bit older, but not in the same numbers that they kind of exited. So it creates kind of this slow trickle of people out of those more rural areas, even though there's that return. And absolutely driven over the long term by the lack of economic opportunities as agriculture has waned and are not needed or not been able to support as many people as it has in the past. That's an important piece. I think when I'm talking with groups like this, focused especially on rural areas and rural development, which many of you are more expert than I in these areas, I think broadband typically comes up as an important way to support diverse economies across the state. And so I just raise that here as one policy option.
Broadband is critical, and I was in a meeting with Commissioner Grove several months ago. We were discussing that the maps that show where there's connect and disconnect are not actually accurate maps. That it's too difficult to accurately scale where who is connected or who has access and who doesn't. So I'm just simply sharing that as food for thought for this group.
Yeah, and some of the things, oh, I'm sorry, Susan, did you want to?
No, go ahead.
So some of the things that my brain keeps wrapping around is thinking about retention, right? So how are we retaining our communities of color in Minnesota? And I think it's not just about like people who are here and living here, but then within all the systems that, you know, support a person to be, you know, successful in life, right? And so how are we retaining our persons and communities and young people of color in education? How are we retaining them in their job places where, you know, they don't feel hostile environments so that they can stay in a job long enough to develop the skills to advance and things of that sort. I think that retention is something that we really have to think about, and then that then goes hand in hand with creating environments of, you know, inclusion and belonging culturally and within the state, within institutions, within job places. And so that it's, I know that it's like these are big things, but I wonder how might we as a group think about these aspects too, because they all cumulatively impact the success of persons and then the success of our economy growing as we demographically shift.
I shared with you net numbers today of the net number of people that Minnesota gains or loses in any given year. But if we look at the flows, the number of people who move in and out year to year, it's close to 100,000, just over 100,000. So that means a lot of opportunity to retain people that are moving both in and out of the state.
Well, Susan, thank you. Thank you. And it sounds like we may be having you back for some follow-up conversation. I'm assuming staff has captured the chats there, because there's a lot of good information, questions, and other resources in the chats. And we've taken good notes, and we will follow up with you, Susan, for additional information, and maybe have you come back at a later point for some additional discussion. Really appreciate your work and your time with us, and again, really helpful just in, again, establishing some common baseline here for us. So thanks much.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you all.
All right, again, just man, I've got a page full of notes. And I'm sure everybody else does. I mean, when I think of, you know, kind of the conversation we've had and just questions we've had here, I mean, ton of discussion about workforce skilling, reskilling, training, discussion about different sectors, energy sector, healthcare, ton of conversation here about healthcare, childcare, discussion about accountability, decision-making, community voice, discussion about who do we partner with, the importance of community organizations thinking differently about what delivery perhaps looks like, and then a lot of discussion, obviously, kind of rural, urban differences, distinctions, and the need to kind of dig into that, and certainly a lot of discussion and comments about the impact on communities of color and BIPOC communities as a resource and as a focal point. So, bunch of different themes that we'll be continuing to dig into. Just wanted to kind of shift into a little bit more logistics on kind of our process moving forward here. I think you have a one-pager that just talks about the meeting schedule and kind of has themes for each of the meetings. You'll see there kind of, again, in those first 4 meetings or so, it's all about kind of building this common baseline, building common understanding. We have, Jeff and I have been working with the commissioners and the staff just to kind of initially identify some speakers, panelists. We'll have that list to you. We wanted to continue kind of fleshing that out. We'll have that to you here by the next meeting, even by next week, I think, just to share at least what those initial panelists and discussions will look like in this first 4 meetings or so. As I mentioned before, we will also have time almost at every meeting where we will actually even break out into smaller groups, breakout groups, just for dialogue and discussion. I'm a big believer, and Jeff and I really, and the staff have really agreed that it's important for us to be able to talk to each other, not just to be talked at or to talk to, but in fact to engage with one another in smaller groups. And we'll do more and more of that, obviously, as we get more into the discussion of recommendations and priorities and that kind of thing. Again, so we've got a lot of different really critical areas that we've already touched on. That's going to be a heavy lift. My hope is that everyone, and I am feeling the pinch like every one of you in terms of giving time to this every week. I couldn't believe that I said yes, but like all of you, I did, and we have, and I really, really hope that you will prioritize this and get here, because I think missing even one meeting, you'll be out of cycle, and then you're trying to catch up. And again, we all have conflicts. It's not an attendance thing, but I do think it's important to really stay in the conversation, and it's going to be every week here for through the 15th of November. So again, thinking creatively about how we will engage with one another in the learning, in the takeaways, even from what we've heard in a given meeting will be kind of built into the process. We do have kind of flex time and opportunities for additional speakers, and we welcome your thoughts on that as we get into this initial part of the process. Again, reach out to staff. I know there's opportunity for public input. I think through the website, if I'm correct about that, Steve, or the staff. Again, we want to feed that into our thinking, and all of you obviously also, represent a variety of constituencies, and we fully hope and assume that you also will tap into your constituencies. If you're sharing any of that, just be sure that you get that to staff and copy Jeff and I. Hopefully that won't be incredible volume, but again, we just want to kind of keep that transparency. So that again, just obviously really looking forward to the dialogue. So I think I'm going to turn it over. Is it Steve to you or to Elizabeth, just to talk a little bit more about process?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Really appreciate it. And what a great discussion to kick us off here. Thanks, everyone. We have just a couple of quick slides on logistics. I'll turn over to Elizabeth Frosch, our Chief of Staff here at DEED, along with the team at DHS and DLI. She's helping manage some of the logistics of this. She has a few slides to share just to share the path ahead. I know there were a couple of tech glitches today. We apologize for that. We will get those ironed out by next week, and we'll open up for some questions too if folks have them. So Elizabeth, over to you.
Thanks so much, Commissioner. We're going to pull up a PowerPoint. Here we go. Good to see you all. Thanks so much. I'm going to just piggyback on a few logistical comments coming off of what Paul just shared. Again, my name is Elizabeth Frosch. Good to see you. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Department of Employment and Economic Development. I'm also collaborating with my colleague, Nick Peterson at the Department of Human Services. So we will together tag team support for this council and for you all going forward. So Nick, if you can go to the next slide. I'm going to walk through a couple details here on schedule, attendance, links and logistics, and finally our meeting requirements. Next slide. So as you all know, having read the executive order, there's sort of two phases to this work. Just to reiterate here in terms of the details, between now and November 15th, this council is setting out to create sort of two deliverables for the governor and the lieutenant governor. Those are immediate actions and recommendations across the public, private, nonprofit sectors, of course, as well as recommendations on how Minnesota might leverage those ARP dollars. So we'll focus on that for what we're calling sort of this first sprint, which will run between now through November 15th. Just a note on logistics, most of our meetings will be held on Mondays from 2 to 4 p.m. And again, just to make a plug, as Paul noted, if for some reason you can't make it, that's okay, but just let Nick and I know as soon as you can. The second phase will kick up probably next year, I imagine after the holidays. We're going to be driving towards a longer term roadmap, a broader strategy to get at systemic change in Minnesota. So that will include outreach and engagement with all the groups and community members listed here. So more to come on those details. Obviously, we're focused on this first sprint for now, but just know that the schedule for those meetings will be worked out in the coming weeks, and we'll be in touch with you with that information as soon as we can. Next slide, please. On attendance, obviously encouraging all members to attend when able. We'd like to limit absences if possible, but we recognize your schedules are tight and you're very busy. Just notify us if you can in advance. And then to the extent possible, we're not delegating to staff or other team members, just trying to keep the focus on the council members being present for each meeting. Next slide, please. On council member meeting and logistics, just internally for our council members, just so you're aware, we will share materials by noon of the Friday before. So for example, for next Monday's meeting, we will get you materials this Friday by noon so you can review that in advance. We'll also provide the link to your schedule so you have that and can sign on. And obviously had a few tech minutes here and delays today, so we'll work that out, but to the extent possible, we'll try and get folks on a few minutes early going into each meeting so we're all ready to go. And again, just to reiterate, please mute your microphones and encourage cameras on when able. We'd love to see your faces. Next slide, please. As far as public meeting links, logistics go, those meeting details, as others have noted on our call today, will be available on DEED's website, which is mn.gov/deed. We have a rotator on our front page with all the information on this council. Folks can find information there and click into the meeting and materials tab, where they will find the links to the meetings, as well as a public comment form. We are encouraging the public to reach out if they have ideas, but to cycle those feedback and details into the meeting form. And this group, as a council, will review those as meeting summaries and notes periodically as well. Next slide, please. So I just want to say thanks and open it up for Paul, Jeff, and the commissioners to field any questions as it relates to meeting and logistics. Look forward to working with you all. Thanks so much.
Questions or comments on meeting process, logistics? I did want to just say, so Jeff and I as co-chairs are going to alternate kind of being the moderator of the meetings, and I volunteered to tackle the first one out of the gate. Jeff, any thoughts you want to add at all on process or content today at all?
You did such a great job. I may have to rethink this and just have you be the moderator all the time. But No, it's just to emphasize, I had a chance to do a radio interview with WCCO this morning, and a couple of the points that they asked about and that were emphasized, this notion that we're in this sort of two-part procedure. There's sort of the longer, bigger Minnesota economic future, and then we have this sort of initial sprint that's focused on the dollars and figuring out specific recommendations. The notion that we will be kind of turning to a more of an every couple week cadence once we hit the new year and once we get to that second part, but we are going to go with this every week, this part. And then just the, you know, it was emphasized there at the end, but sometimes it's easy to forget. These are public. So, I mean, in terms of, you know, what you say, you just need to remember that it is, even though it looks like it's our group and we'll get to know each other better and better, ultimately they're, and as Steve's pointing out, they're recorded. I mean, it's out there, whatever you put out there at that point. So really look forward to working with you and getting deeper in the process. And I'll try to do halfway as good a job as Paul did today when I share next Monday.
It's great. Any other closing thoughts, comments?
Paul, it's Neil. If I could just mention, I know you know this, and I know Commissioner Grove knows this, but for the rest of the council members, at the Federal Reserve, we have a quiet period around our Federal Open Market Committee meetings where we're not allowed to talk about the economy with the public. I'm in that quiet period right now. So when this happens, I'm just going to be mostly in listen mode. And then I'm going to look forward to offer my contributions when I'm out of that quiet period. I'm sorry about that. It's just one of the rules that we have to live by. So if sometimes you hear me not saying much, that's why. But my mind is paying close attention. Thank you.
It's great. Thanks, Neil.
I have one, just a quick one. And maybe the answer isn't really readily available right now, but we talk about the additional or the leftover funds that we will be trying to spend, in an appropriate way to advance this economy. What kind of dollars are we talking about in leftover funds currently, separate from what we may do long-term and legislatively in the next session? But just wondering what kind of dollar values that we're looking at trying to move around and make meaningful difference with.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for bringing that up, Joe. And if everybody should have gotten this one-page overview document that just identifies which slice of the money. And my goodness, when they started taking Jeff and I through all of these different, COVID, dollars, I mean, it is a maze. But Steve, can you or one of the staff just talk about that specifically? I thought that graphic really helped to identify that 1.15 billion in ARP funds that we are actually talking about.
No, that's right, Paul and Joe. It's a great question. I think we will take some time in future meetings to walk through exactly how this all works and, the way the federal government has set up those fundings, what the structure is around it. But the important, I think, thing to know now, and to your question, is that it is $1.15 billion with a B. It's a lot of money. And ultimately, it will be negotiated with the legislature. So the goal of this council, of course, is to inform the governor and lieutenant governor on what their approach should be to the funding. Governors have to, by state law, issue a budget proposal first. So he'll be first out of the gate by law next January. It's part of why we're on kind of a tight clip between now and November, just because we want to make sure we get him the kind of advice that he and the lieutenant governor need. But it'll be a really important first step in that budget process. And then the final budget and spending of that next over $1 billion will be negotiated with the legislature. So more to come on kind of the components and structure of that fund. We'll have some experts from MNB come in and just talk about how it's structured at the right time here. But for now, I think the way to think about it is it's just an unprecedented opportunity. The funds are largely flexible. So you'll hear a little bit of guidelines, but there's a bit of a blue sky nature to all this, which I think is just really exciting for all of us.
And Steve, can you just say a word about, these are one-time dollars, and one of the things that we'll need to think about is what flavor of money is this? And if these are one-time dollars, what kinds of investments make sense for those one-time dollars? How does that relate to ongoing programmatic and operating budgets for state departments? Those kinds of things we'll have to kind of take that into account as well.
Yeah, it's a great flag. They are one-time funds. They, need to be allocated by 2024 and spent by 2026. But just because they're one time doesn't mean we can't think about them in terms of infrastructure or investment, right? And the legislation and the guidelines do call out, infrastructure in particular, and that's a broad term, and ways to invest these dollars that will have long-term effects. But they are one time, so if they start programs, those programs won't naturally reoccur with new funds. These funds will, will start new initiatives if that's the way that the bill ends up coming together in Minnesota. So it is kind of a really unique set of funds in that sense as well. I'm glad you flagged that too, Paul. It's an important point.
Paul,
Any other comment? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think you were on mute, so.
Yeah. Got to train myself yet again. Other comments, questions? Any reflections on, again, the overall process, the first conversation here today? Again, really good exchange. Really good exchange. Okay, well, we will give you 15 minutes of your life back, unscheduled, 14 minutes now. Just again, so grateful to all of you, and really appreciate you all taking time for this, and I'm looking forward to it. Jeff, anything you want to close with?
I'm good, thank you, Paul.
All right, good. Well, we will see you all next Monday and every Monday thereafter. Really looking forward to it. Take care.
Bye-bye.
So long.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.